Yeah. In this book, The Deeply Formed Life, you bring up, and I think it kind of segues really well, you bring up this story of the Titanic, the movie. And I mean, I would love for you to share, but the key point to it is that everything at the bottom always permeates to the top, whether it's in our hearts, in our lives, in the depthness, or also in society. Why are you can you share what you what you're trying to teach us through that metaphor?
Yeah, the reason I love Titanic, number one, it came out in a year when I was working at the movie theater. So I was in late 90s, and I worked at Sony Theaters on 68th Street and Broadway in Manhattan. And so I saw the movie
Take Off.
I watched it so many different times. And, the metaphor, whenever it comes on TNT, it comes on TNT all the time. So I whenever it comes on, I stop whatever I'm doing and I watch it. And the metaphor is plain to see. It goes out to sea, it hits an iceberg, and we see a tale of two different realities. On the upper parts of the deck of the boat, there's opulence, abundance, celebration. But on the lower deck, we see chaos, confusion, pain. And what happens as the movie goes on is the waters begin to rise to the point where, spoiler alert, the ship comes down.
Right.
And I think about that as a metaphor for our lives. Whatever we do not tend to in the lower decks of our lives, at some point is going to rise to the surface. And whether it rises to the surface in addictions, whether it rises to the surface in rage, in anxiety, in depression, or whatever it might be, the degree to which we do not explore what's happening beneath the surface of our lives is the degree to which we will capsize. And so to talk about our emotional lives, to talk about race, to talk about justice, to talk about our witness in the world requires us to look beneath the surface. Now, ironically, the logo of our church is an iceberg. The irony of it all, something that was made for evil in that Titanic is now redeemed for new purposes.
Yeah.
And the image of the iceberg, 90% of an iceberg is not seen with the eye. It is beneath the surface. And what we're trying to get at is Jesus wants to transform us way beyond behavior modification. And Jesus wants to transform us way beyond theological or intellectual assent to something. He wants to transform us to the very core of our beings, identifying our values, our fears, our idols, and our internalized scripts. That's the kind of stuff that Jesus wants to get at.
That is so beautiful. One of, my dad was a pastor for many years. A lot of my friends, when you're a PK, there's kind of like a little tribe that, everybody understands each other. We grew up loving the church. And what really pains me is nowadays with the, social media and just, 24-hour news cycles and gossip blogs and stuff like that is, when Christian leaders that have served the church for so many years, fall into, and I use air quotes, right? Because it's just like, you fall into sin, or there's some sort of scandal, there's some sort of pain, there's some sort of trauma that they now have to admit to that causes them to step down, to be ostracized, to be expelled, you start to realize when you read the stories or you hear the victims or the participants in that fall and that, what people would label disgrace, you realize that it didn't start, it wasn't an all of a sudden thing.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's a lot of these men, and women leaders, they've been wrestling with demons and sin and oppressed sin. And you talk about in Good and Beautiful and Kind about confession, on how essential and important. You said it's the most important thing that the church can do.